Welcome again to Arthur Brown Photography. I see there's been quite a lot of fuss in the photographic press and also here on YouTube in the last month or so about the new Sony A1 camera and the fact it has a 50 megapixel sensor. Now, whilst this might be revolutionary for Sony and revolutionary for mirrorless cameras, it certainly isn't the first full-frame digital camera that's had a sensor with 50 megapixels or even more. It's certainly not the first full-frame digital camera to have 50 megapixels or more. Back in February of 2015, Canon announced two new models of digital SLR, the Canon 5DS and the 5DSR. Now, both these cameras were more or less identical. They both had a 53 megapixel sensor. The only difference between the two models was that the R model had the anti-aliasing filter removed. These came to the dealers in July 2015, and I actually bought one in the March of 2016. So we're looking at 5 years ago now. So a while ago. The frame size on these cameras, the full resolution was 8688 by 5792, and that actually gave a digital image that was in excess of 8K, again, which was quite unusual for the time. The 5DS and 5DSR had more or less the same body as the 5D Mark III that was out at the time. They were very similar. There was some differences in the construction of the body, which is all magnesium, to increase rigidity. So there was extra thickness in the body around the tripod bush at the bottom, and also the mirror box was completely new and had a very low vibration system in it. The thinking being that a 53 megapixel sensor might be a lot more sensitive to vibrations, either from the tripod or from the mirror, than perhaps a standard full-frame camera at the time. Also, when the camera was first released, there was a lot of talk in the press about, you can only use the highest quality lenses with this because of the very high resolution. Any deficiency in your lens will show up more because of the high resolution. Okay, I mean, I've got one here. This is the 5DS with I've got the battery gripper attached to it, but that's something I'll come back to in a few minutes. But I've used all sorts of lenses on this. I tend to use it a lot with this Sigma Art 35mm f1.4, and I used it a lot with the Canon 135 f2L lens, also with the Canon 70-200 f2.8L. And also with my Zeiss 21mm Distagon, which there isn't many lenses better than that. But also, I've used it with less prestigious glass, such as my Tamron 70-300 zoom, the Canon Pancake 40mm f2.8, and I've never noticed any deficiency in image quality caused by lens aberrations at all. So in fact, a lot of the shots I get are the detail is comparable to a medium frame camera, and as I say, at the time this was the only camera that could really shoot to that level of detail. Okay, I mean, there are some deficiencies in it compared to mirrorless cameras and perhaps more modern DSLRs in terms of its, it shoots at 5 frames a second, which I suppose is pathetic by modern standards. And it can only manage video at at 1080p, 24 or 25 or 30 frames per second. So it was never aimed at the sports or the video market, but it was aimed at landscape photography, portrait photography, and anything that required a high detail application. I mean, the image quality rather, at full resolution, and the ability to crop in and get high quality frames is very good. And in fact, indeed, in its marketing material at the time, Canon cited surveillance photography as one of the target areas for the 5DS, alongside product photography, landscape, and portrait work. So perhaps the ideal spy camera if you're trying to spy on people from a long way off. I'll say this is a fairly normal Canon camera as it goes. It takes the EF full frame lenses. It's got 2 card slots in it. It's got 1 SD and 1 compact flash. It's got one or two tricks up its sleeve. It's got a built-in intervalometer, so it's very good at time lapse. Although I must admit this is not really something I'm into, but you've got 2 sorts of time lapse. You can do a time lapse movie at 1080p, or you can set it to do time lapse stills at full resolution. Now, if you have the time and a suitable computer, that means you could actually produce time-lapse video at 8K from this camera. I must say it's something I haven't tried yet. I must say the downside to this camera that I find is its battery life. It's probably got the heaviest battery usage of any camera that I've got. So, but that's why I got the battery grip, because I can put two batteries into it, and it'll last me all day then. So, I suppose this is a problem as cameras get more complex. They use more batteries. I mean, I still have a Canon 550D which I use occasionally because it's small and light and easily transportable. And that has a small battery in it, and it actually it's got the E8 battery, but I can probably use that on a regular basis 2 or 3 times a week, and I only need to change the battery about once every 6 weeks. It's quite incredible. Whereas I'd be lucky to get a day's shooting out of one battery with the 5DS. But that's the price we pay for complexity, one presumes. So, what I want to do now is go on and look at the image quality that can be achieved with this camera. This first shot is one that I took in the woods. It's taken with the 5DS and a 15mm IRIX wide-angle lens f2.4. Now this was taken in pretty poor light, but it is wide open, and but a super wide lens has got a fairly good depth of field anyway, even wide open. But you can see the high level of detail that's in this shot. And don't forget, this is the full resolution, but has been reduced down to 1920 by 1080 to fit on into the video feed. This next shot is a picture of my lunch. Probably the last time I went out for lunch before the COVID lockdown. Again, this was taken in fairly poor light. This was taken with a Canon 24 to 105 f4L lens, and it's at about 48mm on the zoom. But again, you can see the level of detail. However, if I zoom in, I've actually done a crop here, which is probably about 70%, about 30% of the original frame. So that is quite a massive crop. You can see there's still a lot of detail there. Okay, this is f4 lens wide open. This depth of field isn't brilliant, so the stuff slightly closer to the camera is a little bit blurred. But where it's in focus, where the I'm not quite sure what that is, P shoots I think, are in the plane of focus. There is a massive amount of detail. And that is one of the great advantages of this camera, that you can take a full frame and then zoom in and still have a very, very, very presentable image. Right, this next shot was taken again with the 5DS and a Canon 400mm f5.6L lens. I think this was probably one of the occasions when we had a supermoon, or whatever they call it, when it was a bit bigger and closer than it normally is. And this was taken just before dusk, and obviously the sun was reflecting off the surface of the moon. But obviously we've got a nice half moon there, and that is the full frame uncropped image that I got on the sensor. If I crop into that, and again that's probably cropped into about 30% of the original image, you can see that even 250,000 miles away, or however far the moon is, this camera is still picking up a great deal of detail, and you can zoom into the frame because you do have so much detail in the image, and still get a pretty good picture of the moon. Can't quite see the man in the moon, but he must be up there somewhere. This next shot is a picture of one of my dogs. This is Teddy, and he'd been somehow getting flowers attached to him back in the summer. Now this shot was taken with a Canon 135 f2L lens. I'd say from the out of focus background it's probably wide open, and that is the full frame image. So again, I'm going to zoom in, crop in, and look at the detail that we get. Now I've cropped in there, that's probably about 40% of the original image, and again you can see you've got all that detail in the flowers and the fur where it's in focus, because again the depth of field on this lens is pretty shallow, but you can see the detail in the dog's nose as well, so just gives you an idea of what's available. Right, this next shot really does show the quality available with this camera if you put your mind to it. And this is a still life of Peter Garlick. This is the full frame, and this was taken with what is undoubtedly the sharpest lens I have in my collection. It's a Voigtlander 90mm f3.5 Apolanthar, and it has a very close focus on it, and also has a close focus lens attachment, which this was taken with. And this was done, I think probably with natural light from the window, but it was done with a tripod. So it's, and probably mirror lockup as well, because it is very crisp and sharp. Now that is the full frame, and let me crop in on that. Right, I've cropped in now. That is again probably about 30% of the original image cropped in, and then you can see the incredible level of detail that you get with this sensor. This is fantastic for advertising work, and if you are doing big billboards and very large, if you can hear my dogs barking in the background, I apologise. If you're doing very big billboards or very large advertising hoardings or very large, big enlargements, this is the camera to go for. It may be a few years old now, but really without going to a medium frame camera such as a Fuji GX or a Hasselblad, there really isn't much to actually compete with it. Right, I hope you enjoyed that. This camera really has become my workhorse for professional work over the years now. I still have my 5D Mark II, which I use, which again is a pretty good camera. But for detail, this this can't be beaten really. I mean, in terms of price, these are still available, and I'm probably looking at, we're talking English pounds here, probably still looking at £1,500, £1,600, £1,700 to buy one of these. There are still a few about. There is talk from Canon of a Mark II, but I haven't seen that on the market yet. I suppose all these things are going to become eclipsed by mirrorless cameras, and I suppose this will fall by the wayside once we get the new Canon R, is it 5 or 6, that's got a 100 megapixel sensor, so that'll be the next big thing, won't it? So the only downside to this is the file sizes, though. We're looking at probably between 50 and 60 megabytes for each frame. So I tend to actually have to go through and weed out the ones that I don't want to keep, because the storage capacity can get quite alarming, and it does tend to fill up your hard drive quicker than you really want to. So anyway, thanks for listening to me today. I hope you've enjoyed me talking about the Canon 5DS, and please look out for my next video. Bye for now.